Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus, episode 216, the trailer reviews for Dune Part 3 and Spider-Man Brand New Day. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East, and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And today, we're of course going to be talking about some trailers, two of the finest trailers I've seen for a while, and two trailers that have gotten me exponentially more hyped than I ever could have been before for both of these films. On Wednesday, I thought, just another chill day in the week. They dropped the trailer for Dune Part 3, which, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know is literally in my top 3 most anticipated films of this year. And it was incredible. But then on Thursday, the hype didn't stop. It got worse. Spider-Man, Brand New Day, after months of secrecy, rumors, and little snippets of information being dropped online of those behind-the-scenes pictures, we got the first official trailer for Tom Holland's return to the MCU and his new adventures as Spider-Man, and good lord, hype as hell. I did a small reaction on the socials, which you can find on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. But yeah, I did say I was going to do slightly more extended thoughts, so here we are. So I'll do them in order, talk about Dune Part 3, and then talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, I could gush about both trailers for ages, but I understand that we're all busy people. We got stuff to do, and it's heading into the weekend, so I don't want to bore you. So let's just get things started. Alright, so first up is Dune Part 3. Now, if you didn't know, I'm a big fan of these Dune movies. I still haven't seen the 80s film yet, just because I didn't want to be spoiled by any of the story details in there, so I've mostly just stuck to Denis Villeneuve's films. But I have to say that these films have had me enamored from the first time I saw them. I love how these films look and sound. I like the characters. I like the designs, from the costumes to the vehicles to all sorts of stuff. And the first film, I really liked it because it was just so otherworldly and felt so strange and different to a lot of other sci-fi films I'd seen. And even though there have been many films that have borrowed from the Dune books and then applied that to their own properties, seeing Dune have its time in the modern era was just fabulous. And Dune Part 2 was genuinely one of my favorite cinematic experiences I've ever had in my life. Seeing that in IMAX was insane. So after Dune Part 2 came out, I was like, my hype levels are so high. If we get another one of these, I'm in. And this first trailer, if I had to describe it in 3 words, I would use majestic, intense, and dramatic. Everything looks fantastic. Initially, I was worried about Greg Fraser not returning to do the cinematography because his work was instrumental in creating how we saw that world. However, I recently looked up who was Fraser's replacement, and it's actually Linus Sandgren, who's best known for his work with Damien Chazelle on films like La La Land, First Man, and Babylon. But he also worked on No Time to Die, Saltburn, and the recent Wuthering Heights. Now that's a damn good choice. And his work on La La Land, First Man, and Saltburn were especially great. And it seems like he's putting his skills to use in this trailer. The visuals in this film are insane, still offering up that same sense of scope and scale that we saw with the previous ones, but also you got these great uses of lighting, color, and framing, and all of these shots in the film look cool, from what looks like possibly Paul paragliding to that scene of the setting sun to these shots of war on rainy battlefields. It all looks fab. And then looks like there is drama on the horizon for Paul. Now that he's taken on this leadership role, he has to navigate this potential family life that he has, but also being this leader of the Fremen. Looks like he's going to war, and then he has to deal with the consequences of that. And it seems like he's going to be going through a lot from what we've seen in this trailer. I also adore the choice of music, with what I can only describe as Paul chanting along with probably the rest of his people, and how they use that as music throughout. As the music builds, it just gets louder, the chanting and the music, and I'm like, yo, okay, this is what I'm talking about. I'm a big fan of trailers when they can use their own original material as opposed to using licensed music. Now, don't get me wrong, the use of a popular song with a trailer can work, and there have been some brilliant uses of it in the past. But I do feel on occasion sometimes certain people that put trailers together, they use the music as a crutch, or sometimes it could just get very annoying with the use of certain songs for trailers. Or they'll do that thing where they'll use the music but cut it to a beat, or do some weird remix or audio messing around with it where it's just like or some sort of stupid crap like that. I'm like, quit it. But anyway, I understand that this film is based on Dune Messiah, the second book in the Frank Herbert series. And this is where fans of the source material basically say that things get a little questionable. Now, there have been concerns about how the events of that book would be adapted since the time that Dune Part 2 was released. I've never read the book, so I can't speak to any of that story, lore, or character details. But if anyone can make a satisfying film, it will be Denis Villeneuve. He and his team have made the right decisions with the previous two films, so I can only hope they will succeed this time around. But the shots of Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Robert Pattinson, who looks almost unrecognizable, Florence Pugh, and Anya Taylor-Joy, they all look great. It looks like there's all sorts of chaos going on here, and I'm for it. I'm here. Give me December. Bring it to me now. Alright, and now it's time to move on to Spider-Man Brand New Day. And like the previous trailer, if I had to use 3 words to describe it, they would be spectacular, amazing, and astonishing. I know those of you who know your comics, you're like, why do you have to use those? But they felt appropriate. Anyway, considering the official and rumored tidbits of information that we've gotten over the last year or so, I think we've all been desperate to see some official footage of Spider-Man's return to the big screen. And on Thursday, we finally got our first look, and it delivered in a big way. I mean, we got to see the new suit in action, which looks great. We see the return of the Peter Parker struggle with him working his ass off as a superhero but unable to interact with his former friends. He's also dealing with a change in his powers. The visuals look great. You get to see Punisher, Bruce Banner, Scorpion, and frigging ninjas. Are you kidding me? In some ways, this trailer over-delivered, and there are definitely concerns to be had, but I cannot deny that my hype levels went through the roof. So firstly, this feels like a new beginning for Peter. The story and tone seem a little bit more mature and serious, and as Spider-Man, he is older and a lot more confident. However, he's also alone, lacking a support system, and clearly he misses his friends, especially his former girlfriend MJ. On top of that, his powers seem to be changing, causing him some trouble and distress. The mutation of his abilities seem to be a central theme of this film and explains why Bruce Banner is in this film. However, it does make me wonder what will happen to him. Are we going to explore the other comic book storyline, or are we going to go back to the 90s with the animated series where he gained extra arms and became the Man-Spider? Many questions are still up in the air at the moment, but I'm very curious to see how things play out. Also, when it comes to the visuals, they seem a little bit more different and the action is shot in a different way, and I'm vibing with it. It definitely feels like Destin Daniel Cretton is putting his spin on things, and you can definitely feel a little bit of that Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings kind of energy with this film when it comes to how the action is being done. So I'm very curious to see how the rest of that plays out. I also just really like the scope of New York. One of the things that the Amazing Spider-Man films brought into the equation, especially the second film, was the sense of largeness of New York. Because don't get me wrong, I love the way that the Raimi films looked, and the small sections of web swinging that we did get in the Tom Holland trilogy was good. But again, getting that sense of scale of New York is something that is very rarely put to film. The closest equivalent you can get to that is playing the Spider-Man games on PlayStation. But this definitely feels like we're getting new and interesting perspectives for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to swing around in. And I just like the way that all of that looks. The new suit looks so nice. It's very bright and vibrant, and it looks so pretty. And I'm also just vibing with these character interactions. Seeing Frank Castle, aka Punisher, in a Spider-Man film is just so hype. I was very curious to see what Frank Castle would look like, considering how 15/R rated he's been in his own original material. So it seems like they found the right kind of tonal balance for him to exist in this universe. I'm very curious to see how his interactions play into the larger story. I'm also happy to see Michael Mando back as Scorpion, as one of the few characters in Spider-Man Homecoming that we all knew should have returned at some point to be a Spider-Man villain. I didn't think it was going to happen for a while, but seeing him back, I'm hyped, so I'm very curious what the suit will look like in its entirety, because since Spider-Man Homecoming came out, we've had a few redesigns of Scorpion here and there. I think the one from the PS4 video game was pretty good, and even his design in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man was pretty solid, all things considered. So I'm like, okay, let's see what the MCU edition is going to look like. And of course, we can't mention this trailer without mentioning the bloody ninjas in red, who are definitely the Hand. Now, I watched that trailer the first time, I'm like, mate, are they bringing back the Hand again? No way. That's crazy. So yeah, the Hand is that shadowy organization running around causing chaos for certain members of the Marvel Universe. Now, their first appearance, I believe, was in Elektra in 2005, and then they made their most prominent appearances in the Netflix universe, first starting out in Daredevil, then showing up in Iron Fist to a lesser degree of interest, and then by the time they were in The Defenders, they were dull as dishwater, man. They were less than the Foot Clan by that point. Just get them out of here. But it seems like the Hand are coming back in a fairly dramatic way. I mean, their outfits look so much more detailed and interesting and just more distinctive than any other appearance they've had in live action so far. And if Spider-Man is dealing with the Hand, I'm like, yo, who else is going to be dealing with the Hand? Because the Hand definitely lean a little bit more towards Daredevil and Iron Fist territory. So it does make me wonder, will Daredevil be making an appearance in this film? I lean towards yes, which would be cool to see him and Spider-Man team up to go about and take on some ninjas. But then it makes me wonder, who else knows about the Hand? How did the Hand fit into this? There's so many questions. And that leads me into the areas of concern. From the number of characters who are in this film, confirmed and not confirmed, and other plot details as well, there is a fair amount going on. I mean, that trailer alluded to certain other characters who we didn't get to see their faces. There was an off-screen voice that sounded a little like Keith David, and people trying to figure out what's going on with that. And we also have to consider that this film is not only a continuation of the previous Spider-Man films, but it may also connect to the upcoming Avengers Doomsday, and possibly the broader MCU. So there are reasons to be cautious. If this cast isn't well balanced, if the pacing is uneven, or if there are any unnecessary filler elements, it could really harm this film. I can only hope that Sony and Marvel Studios have learned from their previous mistakes and create a Spider-Man film that we all want. That grounded, street-level superhero with events that aren't as catastrophic as what he's been dealing with before. So now I'll turn it over to you, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think of the trailers for Dune Part 3 and Spider-Man Brand New Day? Are you hyped? Are you not? Or are you somewhere in between? Let me know in the comment section below, or hit me up on the socials where Film Focus can be found on Instagram, TikTok, and other places. You know, if you want to support us by subscribing, giving us good ratings and stuff like that, please be sure to do so on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And yeah, I guess that's it for now. Thank you for listening as always, and until the next time, this is the Hypersonic 55 signing out. Peace.